Welcome to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are available in podcast form. You can find them at ArtistFirst.com. We invite your questions and comments. Hit us up the old-fashioned way, DJ@ArtistFirst.com. And here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Scott. And hitting us up the old-fashioned way is like something that the mob would do. Get out your bats. I am Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
And we'd like to encourage you to follow your guidance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what tonight's show is about. We're going to follow our guidance.
Hopefully, yes. We're going to try anyway.
Whenever I do that, I end up lost. But luckily, Margaret's there to help me out and make my wrong turns right.
Oh, is that what I'm there for?
That's what you're there for. Well, in fact, we were talking about this a little bit before the show, and I was saying to you that up until we met, or I would not put myself in the category of following my guidance. And by that, we should probably define our terms a little bit before we go on, because that's always a good thing.
Yeah, it is.
People talk about their guides and I would say, listening to your inner voice as some things that they either aspire to, or that they're kind of reading the that latest self-help book about finding your inner voice, and I would say that that's certainly a subset, and it is something that is good too. It is a good thing to aspire to. But by guidance, what we're talking about really is the superset of all those things. We talk about this often, where your gut feeling about a situation, or your trusting your heart voice, let's call it, about a situation, is oftentimes going to give you the right guidance, the right direction, which way you want to go. And I would put that into the context of many times in life we're faced with a decision. Do I do this or do I do that? And sometimes both outcomes are either unknown, or at least we don't have a particular we don't have a good, clear vision. It isn't like, if you put your money in the bank for 7 weeks, you're going to get 10% interest. I mean, it's not so clear cut. It's do I want to take this opportunity and maybe sell my house and risk and go to this, or do I want to stay where I am and maybe it's safer, but it's not as much. It's not really what I want to do. And you have these it's kind of this decision that it's not clear whether you're doing the right thing. At least from the head point of view, the head or the ego point of view, it's not clear that you're doing the right thing. And in those situations, what we're talking about is looking for guidance. And guidance, I would say, comes through the heart. It comes through that inner voice, that heart voice. But I would say I was not practicing any of that when I was a young man. And I'm still young. I'm not as good at this as you are, and I think that there's a broad spectrum of people in the world about whether or not you listen to your heart voice. A lot of times I tend to make things more analytical. That's just who I am. I tend to abstract things. I'm an engineer. I'm sorry, I have a pointy head. That's just the way I am. But yet, after I met you and I made that good decision, to go and get into a relationship with you, said, "Hey, chalk up 1 for the guidance voice." Say, "That's the one. Go with that one." Okay, and it's worked out well. But I've through association with you and through many challenges in our lives together, I've seen the example of your following your guidance and how you do that. And you speak about it. We wrote about it a lot in There's a Reaper. The internal voice. When we were faced in these particular circumstances, we were faced with very challenging circumstances with our son, and it was hard choices and hard lessons that had to be learned and taught. And oftentimes, you're there, you have to teach, but you don't know the answer. You don't have the lesson. So you would say, I would open myself up for grace, for the inner voice, but also for the external grace to come in and find the words. And that in that extreme circumstance was an exercise of trust built upon the habit you had formed long before I even met you. And that's what I'm saying, is that the exposure to someone who can model this for you is a very good thing. I think everyone has the ability, but oftentimes we push it away because we say, oh, well, I'll just throw on a couple more computer disks and do some analysis thing, and it'll all work out. And that works a lot of time, but a lot of time it doesn't work, And
yeah.
And you're good at it. She's good at it. So I mean, I would like you to talk about you got there.
Oh, well, life.
Yes, life.
The internal voice was something that I began, or you began, as you're taking steps. You realize that is the only constant that you could rely on, because your experiences brought you to the fickleness of human nature. People would say one thing and would wind up doing another, even though their intentions may be good, or their intentions may not have been good, but it would turn out well for me. In other words, they may have tried some kind of a manipulation on me to force me to go and do things or not do things. And you would see through it. Maybe that's the best way to term it, because you got the feeling that this isn't absolutely true. And that's where it all began. You began to realize that you don't want anything less than what is true. And the complexities and the difficulties that arise when you're dealing with another human being. Because many times they are telling themselves a story that they say is true, but what's actually happening, and that's what I would deem true, what's actually happening is what you really want to be able to see. And it's it's all part and parcel to the complexities that people in any kind of relationship encounter. People lie to themselves all the time.
It's true. Go ahead, sorry.
And when you begin to see that they're actually telling themselves something that is not true, but they feel that it's true. In other words, they want to believe that the story that they're telling is the real story. And you sit there and you go, but you're not taking a broader perspective. Usually when all that starts happening, when people start telling themselves a story, it's because they're at the center of it. And when you have the broader picture, you take everything into account. All the participants are taken into account, not just what you believe is this has got to be true because this is the way the story goes.
So if I bring that back to, you're saying that guidance, coming to guidance or coming to the point where you listen to your inner voice is because the inner voice is you're searching for the truth of the situation.
Yes.
And also for a broader perspective.
Right. In other words, I wanted the truth no matter what the repercussions were going to be. Even if it hurt me, I still wanted the truth. I did not want a story or a lie. And I discovered that it was kind of sticky to begin to discern what that difference is according to the person that you're dealing with and how much they've invested in the story. Because some people have invested decades in a story and they would rather... Yes?
Well, go ahead. I was just saying, so at this ego level, they've invested decades in the story and they're trying to manipulate. And what led you though to the feeling that this was wrong? So it was outcomes, or it was just like you could feel the falseness of the ego story? How did you get there and then say, well, there's got to be something deeper than that?
I understood that there was a piece that wasn't coming from this story. Usually when a story is true, even though it's uncomfortable, there is a peaceful resonance that emanates from it.
Oh, peace, like inner peace. Okay.
Inner peace.
Right.
And you just knew that this was, no matter how stupid the story is, sometimes the story is so stupid that people don't want to tell you.
Right.
And it didn't matter to me. I'm not here to judge whether or not, this is a stupid story or not. I just want what is. Which is one of the reasons why I had appreciated science growing up, because they only wanted what is and what was verifiable. So I learned how that system functioned, how it worked. But it only covered a certain area of reality. And I understood, too, that there was much more to reality than what people said, as well as what they only verified. There's more to you than just what's verifiable.
So coming from that, that background where you were seeking the truth, and we were talking about this also before we began the show, is that you learn to rely on your inner voice, and you learn, in this case, I would say, I'll say it and you can correct me, you learned it because you felt the falseness of the other. This sort of ego voice was false, didn't lay flat, didn't ring true. You find the heart voice, and you start to rely upon it, or you start to use it as a guide for your action, or as a measure, or an evaluation of what the story that you're hearing is. The story comes in. Let's just come back to everyone's experience. We all hear stories from people, and sometimes they ring true, and you have the heart and the head in agreement. Yes, that sounds like a true story. And then you have the ones where you're kind of being played, but there is a siren song of, I can play up there, I can play in the ego and the cerebral, I can feed my energy into this story too. You said people invest into these stories, and we said this once in quite a few shows back, that these ego balloons require constant, maintenance. If you're puffing up a story, you've got to keep blowing hot air into it, literally. And we all know when somebody's blowing hot air into a story, and sometimes they want you to help. They're like, you can get involved and we can both blow hot air into this story. But the heart is not about that. The heart pierces these ego balloons. And so you learn to rely upon that. And then, then fast forward, a few years, and I met you, and I found that fascinating about you, that you had this ability to discern. And the first connection we had was at this conversational level where it was a very interesting conversation from my point of view, because it was a very real conversation about, ordinary, mostly ordinary things, but they were ordinary things that we had observed, and I found, and I hope you found, that in sharing them with you, I found somebody who had valid, unique observations of their own that I found rung true. There was a pleasure in not having another person's ego story to blow up. We all understand when we're having a real conversation, it's got merit, it's got value, it's more rewarding. You may put something into it, but you're getting something out of it too. You're not just kind of blowing in the wind and losing yourself. And in this conversation, which was the beginning of our relationship, I was fascinated by this discernment. And I said, well, that's cool. It's a very interesting thing to be able to kind of push past these, I won't call them illusions, but they're certainly creations, let's say, that people have. They have all these creations that they're always putting into, giving life and giving themselves to, pushing past all that and coming to the heart of the matter. That's again language informs the heart of the matter, where you can really understand what's below it all and the truth of it all. And I found that fascinating. And it started me on this, observing you do that started me along the, well, let me do that too. Let me try and trust that heart voice too. Because I found that was a place that we could really communicate, and also a place where the words we were using and the sentiments we were expressing formed a bond. I think at the heart level, when you're having a conversation, when you're both talking about true things, it almost immediately forms a bond, because there's a true flow. There's an actual flow of energy, which gives more than it receives. It becomes an exchange in which you're not depleted in any way. You're more energized than depleted.
It's kind of fascinating because it is a process, learning to be able to hear clearly. I know that there are so many distractions in the world and in life that it's easy to become absorbed in all those distractions. And you say, I had this when you and I met. I had a degree of it, perhaps, but not real hard, grounded, being able to go directly into heart, grace, communication. It was more, you participated in the world. You were required because you had a family and you have a larger family that you're participating in, and then a larger society. So each of those has a level of requirement and interaction. When you're dealing with your family, there are customs common to each culture. Certain ways of communicating that are acceptable and certain ways that are not. Requirements. And then you get the larger societal, you're supposed to do this, this is what you're required to do as a mother and a wife and a member of this modern society. So you were walking a tightrope. At least I remember that. You had to sort of pick and choose what you were going to navigate through. Certain things you took on because, okay, it's my family. I got to do this. They want this. They're not happy unless you're just like, okay, I will do that in order to satisfy them. Or it's part of the extended family, or it's part of this larger, we're all supposed to go to teacher's night because da 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 da, this is part of the way they set it up, or we're all supposed to participate, da da da. But the guidance really started kicking in, clearing of all the fog of distraction really kicked in when Chris was sick.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I think you had a basis, and we had a basis, or at least I felt that we had, our very first challenge, if we talk about our own personal experience, was our first child.
And children are always the first challenge.
Children are a trial by fire.
Yes. Yes, they are.
Yes, they are, and they're just wonderful little crumb crunchers. But anyway, but I think we were married young, and I think we weren't given much chance, and we didn't care, because one of the things we trusted our guidance was in getting married so young, in forming a bond and relationship. We said this is right for us. It doesn't work for everybody else, but it works for us. And we're both the oldest, and so our parents had no idea. They hadn't had any other children be married, and we were young, and we were. They probably looked on us and said, "Well, that's foolish, and they'll get married, and it'll last a couple of years, and then it'll all fall apart." And that was wrong, but we didn't care. We were following our guidance. We got confirmation along the way. We found, people who weren't part of our family, who saw what we thought. We were able to express, I believe, that we had this sort of guidance, this idea that we were right, even though perhaps there was no external confirmation. That we were following the path that we were supposed to be on because it felt true to us. So our relationship was, I think, our first steps into listening to guidance, because we were doing things that we shouldn't have done if we were going by the society rules or by, what's good for your 401k, or none of that. We didn't care about any of that. We went with, we even said it at the time. We said there are people who sail their ships. They stay in harbor. The ones who stay close to shore, and then we were on the ship that was way past the horizon. we were out there charting our own course together. And our first child was a big challenge because, we had no idea what we were doing, but we approached it from if we don't know, we'll do what we feel is right. We'll discuss it. We'll find the truth of it. We'll find the heart of it. And we'll do what we feel is right. And that doesn't mean that everything we did turned out right, but we learned to trust our guidance from that point of view, and picking, our path, what to do for a career, how to handle our early struggles with, just being a young family. Our guidance led us out here to the house that we're in today. And I think we had begun that process before Chris got sick. Chris was a challenge that would rock anybody.
Yes.
And it rocked us.
Yes.
But if you look at what we wrote, and that was not even the 10th of it, but what we wrote in There Is a Reaper is that we were rocked. We were rocked to our core, but we found guidance. And I think in the practice of guidance, one becomes more trusting of it, and then that big crisis hits, and you really have to make the decision to either trust it or, I think, fall apart. And let's trust this. We'll come back to this. I think we're just going to take a little break, go back to the studio. We're listening to our guidance. This is the right time.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a little break, and we'll come back in a couple of minutes, and we'll talk more about following your guidance.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief, Dev, is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
The Timeless Esoterica radio program with Dr. Bruce is broadcast on the 4th Monday of every month at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on ArtistFirst.com. We explore topics including the paranormal, alien life, mysteries, conspiracies, hidden history, oddities, and much more. Each show will feature a special guest with exciting and thought-provoking discussion. Always keep an open mind, an open heart, live forever, and remember Dr. Bruce believes in you.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lyons is Book 1 of the adventures of Dev Kalian, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
You are listening to The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network, the program that gets you the guidance that you need. Back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Hey, you stole my line. I was going to say, well, anyway, you followed your guidance and you're back. and Scott followed his guidance and he stole my line.
He was right in there.
No, it's all good. Well, anyway, welcome back to the Soul of Everyman. And tonight's show we are talking about sort of following your inner guidance. And just in relating, we were talking about, our young life together. I found you inspiring, and I think that together you strengthened my reliance on the inner voice. I saw your example, and I think it always helps to have someone model reliance on the inner voice. It's people sometimes call it the intuition or the gut feeling or trusting yourself. All those things are true, but then the next level was when Christopher got sick, and it took us completely out of ourselves, as it should. It was such a life-shattering event for all of us. And I think at that time, same sort of thing, like when we were getting married, they didn't give us much of a chance. That looked so overwhelming that I don't think anyone would have blamed us if we just threw up our hands and just lost it. And we saw many people do that. And the temptation is always there in every crisis. But I think if you build a habit of trusting your inner voice, of trusting your heart, of following your guidance, even when it seems like maybe you shouldn't be doing, it's the safer path is this one. I'm reminded of Frost. I took the path less traveled, and that has made all the difference. You take the path less traveled, or the path that makes your heart sing, or that you follow your bliss. To quote Campbell. I almost said Buscaglia, but that's interesting. To quote Campbell, in this case, we weren't following our bliss, but I think we had developed a habit of relying upon each other, of relying upon our heart's intuition and sight, of trusting each other's heart sense. So we would say, what should we do? We would talk about what we should do. And then and in everyone's life, big challenges come along, and then if you follow your heart, it gets stronger. But then there was something more, and you alluded to it last half hour. You also realize that there is an end to your inner voice. There is an end to self in all things, but there is much more. There is the connection back to spirit. And in spirit, we are timeless, we are eternal, we are beyond ourselves. We are not bound to the limited existence that we have down here. We're still here, we haven't left, but we're not bound here. And if you cross over through your heart voice, because that's the gateway, into spirit, you open yourself for a different kind of guidance. You open yourself to grace. And in that, you also led us.
Grace is the only thing that kept me going. When Chris was sick, and you entered into a world where they have to tell you all the bad news, all the possibilities, and just so that you're aware of what's going on. And I think they have to do that too for insurance purposes.
And I think it's part of their duty. They see it as part of their duty, and they're right. They have to inform you.
Right. And the enormity of the task didn't set in until we were really walking it. I mean,
let me stop you just to comment. Those things, though, are a tremendous burden on the ego. If you believe them, it will break you. To go on.
Well, yeah, whatever way you had been dealing with stress and how to make decisions falls apart under those conditions, because this is so outside your normal box that unless you believe that there is a higher hand or a greater way, you will fall into a basket and pretty much demand that somebody take care of you. And unfortunately, we had seen that repeatedly in the pediatric cancer wards.
Or you have a nervous breakdown, which we also saw repeatedly.
Yeah, and the thing is, there would be other parents there, and they would say, "Oh, such and such, he did it that way, and he wants to like run away or not deal," and then they would shake their head and say, "Oh, but you can't blame him for that." And I looked at them and I'm like, I don't know about that. Not to say that you blame them, but that's not shouldering the burden. Mm. And we would go into these discussions of, they look at me like, well, why can't they just go and do that? And I was like, well, did you ever see the effect it had on their child? Mm. Their child has got to shoulder the burden that they are refusing to pick up. The child is the one that has got to answer these questions. And you know what? The child does do it because out of love for the parent that's falling apart, they're like, okay, they're having trouble. I'll handle this. And as a child, you don't think that maybe you can't handle it. You're the center of the problem. And that always makes sense to children. They're always the center of the problem. Mm. And in their head, that's what they always believe. Whatever problem there is, it's got to be because of me. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to shoulder this burden. And I sat there and like, well, as a parent, you're going to have to shoulder some of that burden. You may not shoulder all of the burden because the cancer is happening to your child, but it's not happening to you. So who's taking the chemo? Not you.
Right. And the crystal clear sentiment is, as you said, the children are closer to the heart right away. We all know that as children we're closer to the heart. We follow our guidance naturally as children. We didn't talk about it, but you don't see a 2-year-old not following their guidance because their guidance is everything.
It's immediate.
It's immediate. It's like whatever I want to do, I feel it in my heart, and I just do it. And it's so immediate that they're already down the road doing the thing before you turn around. They're like, "Yep, that's what I want to do." Now it gets them in trouble, and they're 2, so you have to deal with that. You have to, but the immediacy of it, and that's why when children are afflicted with these things, you do see them go instantly into the heart and into grace. But it isn't fair or right to not try to take as much of that burden as you can as a parent or as any caregiver. And I think your argument was it isn't fair or right to abdicate because the burden has to be carried and the child will instantly carry it, but you're still putting a burden upon them. This is in specific, but if you decide, and here is the key, if you've developed a habit of listening to your heart voice, when the crisis comes, and whatever it is throughout all life, we can't avoid crisis. It happens. When the crisis comes, you trust and you listen, and sometimes you're given the guidance, and you're like, really? I should do that? If you follow it, you find that the way opens, that unexpected things happen, that all the things you mentioned, all the doctors tell you, all the things, this would happen, this would happen, this would happen, and you just say, yeah, you take it all in, you say, yep, that could all happen, but it's not happening. We used to say this all the time. That could all happen, but it's not happening today. And you in the heart voice and in listening to it, you live the day, a day at a time. You don't borrow trouble from tomorrow because the heart doesn't do that. The head does that. So you get there. The crisis comes, and it feeds that, in shouldering and deciding to shoulder your burden, you find the strength. It's a funny thing because if somebody says, do you have the strength to bear this burden? You say, no, I have no idea if I have the strength. I don't think so. But if you ask your heart, the heart says yes. And if you trust it, you do. It doesn't. You don't say to the heart, "Where will I get the strength?" The heart goes, "I don't know." It doesn't. It isn't going to tell you exactly where the strength will come from. It just says, "Rely upon the grace, and the strength will come." The head's like, "Well, where? Where we're going? It's going to do this. It's going to do that. Going to do the other thing." And you're like, push that all back. The heart says, "We can do it. We'll find a way.
We must do it.
We must do it."
And therefore we find a way. Because the minute you say, we must do it, it puts that mental fluttering in abeyance. Because the fluttering is like, well, it could be, it could be, it could be. It's like,
There's something else there too, Ma. When you just said it, when we say we must do it, people talk about manifestation, and they don't know what they're talking about. When you say we must do it, you put a requirement for the power and the grace out there. You open yourself. You say it must be done. Give me the tools to do it. You open your hands. When you say it must be done, you aren't saying I will do it. You're saying it must be done. I'm your agent. Give me the tools to do it. Give me the strength. It's an opening.
And it is a reception. And the truth, and I said this before, I want the truth no matter how difficult it may be.
Right.
Okay, so going through this, and they will tell you all the speculations and the repercussions of all the different protocols that are there and the complications, and it goes on and on and on.
And the odds.
Of course, the odds, because that's their only way of trying to communicate to you the immensity of the decision. They want to give you an idea of almost like a scale. Well, this is how big this decision is.
Yes.
And I do remember, and I think I've said this before, sitting there and I was talking to God and said, Lord, this is too much for me. I cannot do this on my own. I don't have the wisdom. I don't have the knowledge. I know nothing about this disease. I'm barely familiar with the name of it and how it actually is a disease. This is beyond me. I need help. I need your grace to get through this. And I had to hand it all over at that point and just said, just guide me, Lord, because there's no way I can learn this, enough information about this to begin to chart a course. I don't even know how big the ocean is or how deep it is. I need help. And that analogy of setting sail. I mean, the ocean of water underneath you is so deep and so random, but so is the ocean of sky above you. You don't know what's coming through, whether it's sunny or cloudy or wind or hail, or it's not in your hands, but you are in this little boat and you're trying your best to be able to bring life back into the world, because something's coming in to try to take the life that is in your boat away from you. So you make the decision at that point. We must continue. Lord, I trust you. Just guide me.
And over again.
Yes.
You did that. And there were seminal points in this journey, in our personal journey, and in everyone's journey, where you need the words, or you need the action, or you need the decision. And the key is you need it, and you ask for the inner voice and the grace, especially if it's beyond yourself. It's at the end of self, it's beyond self. the inner voice and the grace, you say it must be done. I decide I'm willing to do it, but I don't know or I don't have the way. Show me the way. So we talked about this, and I think our graphic will be up on the website. The inner voice is the way. It's a revelation of the path and the provision of the tools and the strength. But there's a key here, is you have to say, I'm willing to do it. So the will comes first, the volition.
Permission.
You're given here's everything that could happen. It's all going bad. There's no way you're going to survive. We don't give you any chance. The odds are bad. Are you still willing to do it? You get to choose. Once you choose, you rely on the inner voice, you rely on the grace, and you open up and say, I'm willing. Show me the way. And that's the point. If you've trusted your inner voice, you've learned to trust the truth of the matter. Once you reach the end of self, and the crisis is way beyond you, it's way out in the sky, it's way out in the deeps of the ocean. There's no way self can encompass it. No way self has enough power. The ego's way in the back. The ego's like gibbering in a hole somewhere. Don't even worry about that. The ego's gone. Self, the heart itself doesn't have it, but the heart has the door to limitless grace, to undeserved outcomes. And the only thing that requires is the I want, I will, I am willing to do. Show me the way.
I'm willing to be.
I'm willing to be. That's even better.
The doing part is the direction that you're being guided through.
Yeah, it's just I'm willing.
I am willing. No matter what this journey may bring, I am willing. I am here.
And the key, again, the I am, is a being state. And then that willingness will be tested, and you'll find that each day you may have to be willing again, because the only thing constant about a struggle is that you can give up at any time.
They want you to.
Well, even if they don't want you to, you are always given, no matter what external forces, I mean, it doesn't matter what others do want you to give up, but it doesn't matter. You're always, every day, you have one task, and the task is, am I still willing? And the answer is yes or no. It isn't a given. It isn't once you say, I'm willing, and then everything else is good, and it's all just going to happen, and blah, blah, blah. No. Every day, sometimes every step, they say when you're walking through hell, you have to keep walking. Don't sit down and make a camp there. Well, every step is a volition. It's a will. It's an expression of I am still willing. I am willing to take the next step. Now, grace comes. Your heart voice comes and says, where does the step go? What is the next step? It isn't that you're given a map. You're given the vision of your next step. That's it. You're still walking in the dark. You're still walking in, this is the word that everyone hates, but you're walking in faith that your heart voice and your grace will come if you are willing. Faith is one of those words that gets all bollocksed up in people's minds. What it really means is that you trust that if I am willing, there will be a way. It doesn't mean you always win. It doesn't mean you're not going to die. It doesn't mean any of those things. It means that you're willing to open the door and trust that there will be a way.
It also means you are willing to participate in the moment, to engage fully in this moment now, You're not running away from it. You're not trying to think of other things that might be more pleasant or pretend, you begin to tell yourself stories. No.
Mm-hmm.
You put all that aside and you say, I am willing to participate in this journey across this wide ocean with the situation that is in my boat. I am here and I am willing. And that's all there is, moment to moment.
And you said it exactly right, because once you say you're willing, then the next step is revealed and the path is revealed. The willingness to take the next step doesn't mean the next step will be easy. It means that you're willing to do it regardless of the difficulty. You've thrown that to the wind. You said, whatever it takes, even if this next step is my last step, and I don't know that, whatever it takes, I'm willing to take the next step. If you want to give up, it's still an end, but it's no longer will. It's just giving up. And people do give up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the journey, because failure is always an option.
Mm-hmm.
But even after you've given up, you can be willing to take the next step, because giving up isn't an end unless you let it be an end.
Well, the giving up, there was one young man I remember there. He was older than the children. He was in his 20s. But it was on the peds ward because the disease he had was a childhood disease.
I think he'd started there and he'd grown up, in essence, in the disease. So he'd begun...
No, you're thinking of someone else. Because that was another one.
Okay.
But this person had basically had his Make-A-Wish Foundation wish come to him. And he went off somewhere and he did all these things that he had always wanted to do. And he's in his 20s, so he had this list. Okay, so it was going away and having this fantasy vacation and enjoying life there. And then he came back. It was like a week of that. And then he came back because he was going to undergo this other treatment. And I remember speaking with him before he went off and after he went off. And to make a long story short, he realized that all that wasn't really what life was. And the fight and the choice to live every moment was the important item, the important focus of life. To choose life in the moment. And that became real to him at that point. Because he went through that, the Make-A-Wish illusion, the illusion, the story that he told himself that if only I had, I could grow up and have my whole life, I would do this and that and the other thing, blah, blah, blah. You get it all. Now what?
Exactly. But there's truth. There's true. You started when you listen to the heart, you're looking for truth, and all that is illusion. And the heart cuts through that. Crisis cuts through that. Existential crisis cuts through that. But it's so important to have begun the journey of trust in your inner voice. Realize that even the inner voice reaches an end, and then there's a door that can go into a greater than self experience, and you will develop this habit for the times that there are crises, because none of us will get through our lives, as we say in the Soul of the Everyman, no one gets off the planet alive, and no one gets through life without crisis. So, the guidance, following your guidance, is a lifelong journey. It starts when you're young. If you can hold what you found what you had in your youth, and bring it and rely upon it as you mature, it becomes a source of really boundless strength. And we are now at the bounded end of our show. So let's follow our guidance. I'll be Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret. And thank you for listening.